before we get to these questions, the Nuggets are going to lose their second round playoff series to the Phoenix Suns. I'm not dating this podcast by saying that before we see Game 4. It's just they're not going to win the series. And there was discourse on. I listened to a few podcasts, from people I respect, and they weren't trolling. I saw the discourse on Twitter, so I don't think I'm fighting against phantoms here. Maybe I saw the wrong people on Twitter. There is this logic of thought that it is harder to build the championship team around Nikola Jokic than it would be certain other players because he's not an elite defender. Now, I'm calling bullshit. We go through this every year when a star gets eliminated earlier in the playoffs. Dame makes it harder on his team to defend. Rudy Gobert makes it harder on his team because he's not a number one option on offense. Perfect NBA superstar does not exist. There are challenges with everybody. There are challenges with Luka Doncic. I think he's gotten better on defense. You could probably switch with him more, but it's going to be hard to build a defense around him. And he still needs another shot creator. It was the same thing with James Harden. It's the same thing with LeBron James. Anthony Davis basically turned into the best 3-and-D wing we've ever seen during the NBA playoffs last year, and the Lakers won the championship. I get that Nikola Jokic is not a good... the discourse can be, how good is Nikola Jokic on defense? If you want him as your backline rim protector, I think you're going to get screwed over and over again. You want to be more aggressive? He has great hands. He's kind of quick, but even if he's not quick, the hands will help you maybe be more aggressive. Can you get some help rim protection coming from the weak side if he gets beat? There are things you can do there. It's the personnel around him. You're going to have to tailor it better. I think we would run into this issue had they had Jamal Murray, had they had PJ Dozier, and that's okay. I don't think the Nuggets have screwed up. They went after Aaron Gordon, and he helps a ton on defense for them in the longer view. But let's look at the Phoenix Suns. They have Jay Crowder, they have Mikal Bridges, they have Torrey Craig, and they have a big DeAndre Ayton who's perfectly built to defend an Anthony Davis type player, or as we've seen against a Jokic type guy. Because these aren't these guys that are going to carve him up necessarily in the pick and roll dives. He's better suited to go against I don't want to say stationary bigs, but if you're not going to get them in a ton of screening action, DeAndre Ayton's better suited to defend that. And so my whole thing is, Nikola Jokic gives you challenges. There's maybe one prime LeBron James didn't give you challenges, and I don't understand this need to think that there's not stipulations for every superstar that we have in today's game. Name the superstar, Adam, that there wouldn't be stipulations that you need to build a specific team around. And
I can't.
Exactly. And I don't want to say the Nuggets have failed, because I think, it's important that teams like them are so good because they're in small non-glamour markets, let's call them whatever. And I want them to be good. It's good for the NBA that they're good. But we sort of go through this with Rudy Gobert. Do I think Nikola Jokic is better than Rudy Gobert? Yes, by a substantial margin. And I'm always going to favor the person who creates more on offense. That doesn't mean that Rudy Gobert was not a top 15 player in the NBA this year, because you better believe that he was when you look at the defensive value that he provided. He's a defense unto himself. And you know what? To build a championship team around Rudy Gobert, you need a Donovan Mitchell. You need other guys who are going to make three-pointers and can handle the ball, because he can't do it, because there's not a single damn player in the NBA that can do all these things at once. And it's just mind-melting to me that we have to look at a top 5, top 7, top 10 guy, whatever Nikola Jokic is at this point, and think, it's too hard to build a championship team around him. No! There's just a very specific way you have to go about it. Some teams have gotten luckier, or maybe gone about it better than Denver, if you wanted to say. But can we also just look at the fact that, okay, none of us think that Portland was a contender. The Nuggets just beat Portland without Will Barton, without Jamal Murray, and PJ Dozier would have been important in that series, I think, for the defense he could have provided against Portland's backcourt weapons. You were missing 2 of your top 6 players, though, and you still beat them because Nikola Jokic is a monster. And, let's look at... what about if Michael Porter Jr. is not dealing with back issues right now? Are they down 3-0, about to get kicked out of the second round by the Suns? I don't know. I would have picked the Suns anyway if the Nuggets were at full strength. Full disclosure. That doesn't mean that you can't build a title team around Nikola Jokic. And I know Robert in the chat says Nate Duncan is the worst about this. He stubbornly refuses to change his opinion about Jokic from 4 years ago and finds every opportunity to clown on him, disrespect him, which is a shame because I enjoy his work for the most part otherwise. I enjoy Nate Duncan's work too. I actually did not hear any of the latest Nikola Jokic stuff, if there's been that. But sometimes teams are just not as good as other teams, and it happens. That is, I think, I can't remember who said this. I think it was Caitlin Cooper on Twitter might have just said that sometimes there are teams that you can't adjust because they're just worse than the other teams. It was either her or Seth Partnow or both, and there were a bunch of other people that had level-headed takes that didn't go as viral as the stupid-ass takes, because we have to live off this, inflammatory commentary now. I just like, we have reached, and this isn't a Nikola Jokic thing. I've heard it with Luka Doncic. I get there's flaws there, but like, you have to go about, like, look at James Harden, Kevin Durant, and Kyrie Irving. It might be easier in theory to build a title team around any one of them. All three of them teamed up because that's the league today. Like, you need a ton of shot creators. And if Brooklyn loses, we're going to have questions about, oh, do they have enough defenders around them? Like, this is just, I can't. And it's even with Giannis and the Bucks. I think there's a real discourse about Giannis where they're talking about, hey, you have to trade Chris Middleton or something if the Bucks lose now. And like, I kind of get it, but if you can't win, come out of the East with Chris Middleton and Drew Holiday, who, again, they've been iffy, both of them at different points during the playoffs. But so is Giannis. And if you can't win, get out of the East with those three guys and Drew and Chris Middleton as your, 2A, 2B, however you want to stash them, maybe the problem is Giannis at that point. And I love Giannis, but like, the shooting is an issue. Stop taking those shots. Be better. You have to figure out the free throw line stuff. Take fewer threes or figure out the three-point shooting stuff. I think it's important there's volume there, as I've said, because the volume itself is kind of a counter. I've compared it to Marcus Smart, where I do think defenses change the way they go at you if you're taking those shots. With Giannis, they don't because they're just not going in. And I think Giannis is a top 5 player in the NBA. I actually had him atop my MVP ladder at one point this season. I'm just pointing out that, like, it's so warped where it's like, well, how come it's Nikola Jokic's fault? Nuggets, it's harder to build a championship team around him. But the response in Milwaukee to Giannis struggling is, oh, hey, we got to trade. Now Chris Middleton's got to go on the trade block. I do not get, it takes a lot for me to get triggered nowadays, but this triggered me.
I think so much of this is the result of the pervasive rings culture, where so much of an NBA legacy is determined by how many championships a player has won, for better or for worse. And in this case, I think it's very much for worse because it means that every team that didn't win a title failed. And I don't think that is an accurate way to look at what transpires during any given basketball season. We said it with the Knicks, where even though they got blown out of the first round of the playoffs by the Hawks, this was a massively successful season, albeit one that has a bunch of unanswered questions for the future going, but it was a massively successful season. The Nuggets, anyone who mentions their struggles in the second round without saying the words Jamal Murray, which seems to be happening pretty frequently, that's not a fair analysis of the season that this team had. The Golden State Warriors had a good season given everything that was thrown their way because Steph carried them into the play-in tournament, even if they didn't advance into one of the actual playoff rounds. You can look at team after team that way, but we don't, because as soon as they're eliminated from the postseason field, there's this immediate urge to run and analyze how it could have been fixed and how it could have been better. Sometimes it couldn't have been better. And that doesn't get said enough. So I wholeheartedly agree with everything you said. I don't think that there's a single player in the NBA where you can just put him there and no matter what is around him, yeah, they're going to be a contender. Every single top player is going to have a weakness that needs to be accounted for, whether it's Steph's lack of defensive game-changing ability and you need to put wing defenders around him while also still making sure that defenses can't totally collapse towards him, or LeBron James needing Anthony Davis as a running mate to win a title at this more advanced stage of his career, or Jokic not being a great primary rim defender as a defensive centerpiece. Every single player, Giannis is probably the best example, where I think that he, of those superstars, regardless of where he might fall in the pecking order, does have the biggest flaw that really needs to be accounted for and makes it more difficult to build a championship caliber team around him. And the Bucks are still doing their darndest to account for that.